Imagine a lonely orbital station where rain falls in perfect rhythm, where a 7-year-old girl buys groceries for an old dragon whose past holds secrets that could change the galaxy, and where one small act of kindness sparks a battle that unites an entire species. This is the night Horizon Ring 12 will never forget. If you are new to the channel, then please subscribe to the channel and like the video, and tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? Now, let's jump into the story. The artificial rain over Horizon Ring 12 fell in careful rhythm, each drop timed by hidden systems that cared for every life under the market dome. The purple gas giant beyond the clear roof rolled like a slow ocean, and 3 pale moons stitched long shadows across shining floors. Crowds moved with the calm hurry of evening. Vendors called out specials. Carts hummed past rails of fruit grown in light farms. This is where the story begins. In a place both ordinary and strange, with a single choice that will echo far beyond one night. Lena Marlowe stood on tiptoe at the counter of Glint's General Market. She was 7, curious, and small enough that the payment screen always seemed a bit too high. Her mother had trusted her with a slim credit tab and a short list. Protein rolls, herb packets, a small treat if the numbers worked out. Simple tasks for a simple evening. She kept her focus steady. That was how she liked to make her parents proud. Behind her, a hover cart bumped the line rail and shivered to a stop. She glanced back and saw an old dragon, tall even while bending, scales dulled to the color of old copper. His wings folded so tight against his back they looked like a worn coat. His claws trembled around an outdated crystal payment chip. He lifted his head with slow dignity, then set the chip on the pad. The display blinked red. Glint, the gelatinous clerk, rippled with visible impatience. His voice came out as a soft squelch. He said the balance was not enough. He said the dinner rush was starting. He asked the old dragon to step aside. The dragon's voice sounded like a cupboard door that had not been opened for a long time. He apologized. He asked if the heat stones could be removed. He said he would make do without them. His eyes, clouded but warm, drifted to the items in his cart. 3 cans of neutron broth, a budget coil for a nest warmer, a packet of dusted comets no one buys for taste, and a tiny cake with glowing script that read, "Happy First Flight." Lena watched his hands try once more. She heard the pad reject the chip again. The market noise seemed to fade for a moment, as if the dome itself held its breath. And then she acted, the way people sometimes do when the world offers a door and a key at the same time. She set her credit tab on the scanner. She told Glint to put his items with hers. The clerk stared at her, then at Dev and Hima's address tag on the tab. He asked if she was Sir. Lena nodded. She said her mother taught that gravity holds planets together, but kindness holds people together. The scanner chimed green. Totals balanced. 2 receipts printed, one for the family basket, one for the dragon's small cart. The old dragon turned, eyes brightening by a shade, as if someone had opened a window inside him. He placed one careful claw on Lena's shoulder, gentle enough that the fabric of her jacket did not stir. He asked her name. She said, Lena Marlowe. Block 5, Level C. She added that her father worked with numbers for the Ore Guild, her mother taught life science, and her little brother Rohan liked to teach cleaning robots how to dance. The dragon's face loosened into the shape of a smile that had not visited in a while. He repeated her name, syllable by syllable, as if setting it in a safe place in his mind. He said he would not forget. He introduced himself as Toraval, a traveler from old roots. He gathered his few groceries. He turned toward the sliding doors. Lena called to him, wishing a good first flight to whoever would get the cake. He paused. A single tear slipped down his scaled cheek and hissed where it met the polished floor. Then he stepped into the evening flow and vanished among carts and coats. The market exhaled and found its usual beat. The artificial rain ticked on. The purple planet rolled. Lena finished paying for the family list and tucked a chocolate comet into her bag for Rohan. She walked home through corridors that smelled faintly of citrus cleaner and warm bread. She did not feel like a hero. She only felt sure she had done the right thing. The Marlowe apartment was small, tidy, and full of soft light. Dev checked a work message, then helped stir pasta. Hema graded a simple quiz on plant memory and smiled at a note in the margin. Rohan explained a new dance routine he had built for the hallway scrubber and promised he would uninstall it after one more test. Dinner plates clink. The day felt complete. Then the light outside the window changed. 12 vessels descended through the entry portal above the housing block. They were not standard gray shuttles. They were not white medical cruisers. They wore dark hulls that drank the glow around them and returned it as a quiet shimmer, as if night itself had learned how to land. Their armor looked like scales set edge to edge, forged into patterns that belonged more to legend than to traffic logs. Lena pressed her nose to the viewing panel. Her voice went thin with awe. She said, "Dragon ships." Dev stepped between the window and his family, a habit older than fear. He told Hema to move the children toward the inner room. No one moved fast. They moved as if a line had been drawn on the floor, and they were deciding whether to cross it. A chime sounded at the door. It was not loud. It simply announced that something important had arrived. Dev checked the corridor camera. 3 dragons stood outside, filling the screen with formal uniforms and polished emblems that caught the hall light. Their posture was calm. Their faces were grave and steady. They looked like history had chosen tonight to ring a bell. Dev touched the intercom and asked how he could help. The lead dragon, scales deep blue like a night sea, spoke in a voice like distant thunder under cloud. He said they sought Lena Marlowe. He said the visit concerned her act of goodwill at the market. He said the matter was not small. Hema drew Lena close. She asked what had happened. Lena said she had paid for groceries and a small cake. She added that the dragon had seemed sad. Dev breathed once, twice, and opened the door. The dragons entered with care, lowering their heads to fit the human frame. They introduced themselves as Captain Corvain, Navigator Celis, and Archivist Miralith. They thanked the family for the welcome. They asked to share a message. A small projector painted light into the air. Torval's image flickered into view. Not hunched now, but upright, eyes clearer, voice firm. He spoke to the camera and to Lena by name. He said kindness had reminded him that hiding keeps a body alive, but not a people. He gave coordinates to an abandoned ore bay. He asked to meet at midnight station time. He said the girl should be there to see what her choice had set in motion. The room went quiet, except for the soft drip of the rain systems on the dome beyond the window. Dev looked at Hema. Hema looked at Lena. Rohan looked at everyone. Corvain spoke gently. He said collectors hunted elders like Torval for what they thought dragon scales could give them. He said Torval once hid something the dragons called their long memory. He said the old traveler trusted Lena because kindness sees what fear misses. He said they would protect her. He said they would also accept no for an answer. Lena thought about the tear that hissed on the market floor. She thought about the small cake with bright letters. She thought about how good it felt when a hard moment becomes softer because someone tried. She said she wanted to go, not for adventure, but because lonely should not stay lonely. Dev and Hema stood on their side of a quiet choice and then stepped over it together. They said they would go as a family. And outside, the 12 dark ships waited like calm shadows as Horizon Ring 12 turned toward midnight. The door to the Marlowe family's apartment slid open, and the corridor lights shone across polished scales and formal uniforms. 3 dragons filled the entrance, tall and commanding, yet careful as they lowered their heads to fit inside. The air seemed to change as they stepped across the threshold, carrying with them the weight of old history and something even heavier, expectation. Captain Corvain stood at the front, his scales a deep blue like an endless night sky. Behind him moved Navigator Celis, whose bronze armor reflected the hallway lights, and Archivist Miralith, whose silver scales shimmered like written pages under the stars. Together they looked both timeless and precise, as if they had stepped directly out of forgotten chronicles. Dev Marlowe, father of the family, stood with his thumb hovering near the emergency, alert. His wife Hema kept one arm wrapped around their daughter Lena, while young Rohan peeked curiously from behind a chair. The room was tense, the family caught between caution and the strange honor of being visited by such figures. "We come in peace," Miralith said softly, her voice flowing like the sound of pages turning in a quiet library. "We are here because your daughter did something rare. Her kindness has reached farther than she can imagine." Lena's small voice answered quickly. "I only paid for some groceries," she whispered. Navigator Celis leaned forward slightly, his tone gentle but firm. "In a universe where fear is easier than generosity, that is not only, that is everything." Captain Corvain placed a small device on the family's table. It activated with a faint hum, projecting a clear holographic image into the air. The figure was familiar, yet changed. Torval, the old dragon Lena had met in the market, appeared stronger and more certain. His eyes no longer seemed clouded with weariness. "If you are watching this," Torval's voice said, "then you have found the child who reminded me of something I had forgotten. Kindness still exists in this universe. I am done hiding. I will reveal myself, but only if Lena Marlowe comes. She must see what her small action has awakened. The hologram ended, leaving silence behind. Only the faint hum of the air systems filled the room. Hema frowned and looked at her daughter. An abandoned orbe? At midnight? That is dangerous. It sounds like a trap. Corvain bowed his head slightly in respect. Your caution is wise, but know this, Torval is not an ordinary wanderer. Long ago, he carried something our people valued above treasure. He guarded the horizon cache. Inside it are the genetic songs of our species, memory crystals, with 50,000 years of knowledge, and the starlight eggs. Eggs that could one day carry the future of dragons. Dev's face tightened with disbelief. And you think my 7-year-old daughter should be involved in this? Miraleth's silver eyes softened. She already is. Without knowing it, she stepped into the path of history the moment she chose compassion. Her act reached a place none of us could. Rohan whispered to his sister, "Maybe your stickers really did give you hero powers." Lena gave him a quick smile, then turned back toward the dragons. Celis activated another screen showing the station's quiet corridors. The collectors will be searching. They are ruthless hunters who believe dragon scales bring them longer life. For centuries, they have pursued the oldest among us. Torval hid from them, but now he calls us to stand together. He asks for Lena because she reminded him of what must never be lost. Hema held her daughter tighter. She is only a child, and yet, Miraleth said, sometimes it a child who holds the clearest truth. Still, the choice is yours. We do not force families apart. We will accept no if that is what you decide. Lena listened quietly. She thought about Torval's shaking claws at the checkout counter, the way he had tried to give up the heat stones for his aching joints, and the small cake that carried bright letters for a day he clearly thought he might not celebrate. She remembered the tear that sizzled when it fell. Her voice was calm when she spoke. I want to go, not because I want adventure, but because he looked lonely. If I can help, I should. Her parents exchanged a long L, the kind couples share when a choice is too large for words. Finally, Dev nodded slowly. We will go together. She will not face this alone. The rest of the evening moved like a clock, suddenly wound too tight. Sergeant Yarrow from the station guard arrived with 2 officers, setting up protective measures. Personal shield bands were distributed. Lena practiced activating hers until the soft shimmer of blue energy surrounded her like a soap bubble. Rohan laughed and tried to name the shield, though Lena told him no glitter would be allowed. Miraleth scanned the apartment carefully, uncovering 3 hidden listening devices, tiny seeds left by unknown hands. They hissed and burned out when exposed. Yarrow's jaw tightened, proof enough that danger was already close. Celis established secure channels for communication, wrapping messages in encryption so complex, even the most determined collector would fail to crack it. Corvan checked station logs, watching the flow of transports and the patterns of the docking bays. Outside, the dark dragon ships waited in still silence, guardians against what might come. When the preparations slowed, Corvan told a quiet story about the Sapphire Flight, an old dragon fleet that once sailed oceans of starlight. Rohan drifted to sleep before the end, curled under a blanket, while the others listened. The story carried weight, but also comfort, a reminder that bravery was not new to these visitors. Minutes before midnight, the Marlowe family stepped into the corridor with their protectors. The station felt different at that hour. The usual noise was gone. Only distant footsteps and the hum of machines remained. Signs flickered weakly. A pipe dripped somewhere, echoing like slow rain. Lena walked between her parents, her shield band humming softly against her wrist. She kept her promise to herself. She would stay close. She would listen. She would be brave in the way that protected others, rather than risk them. The ore bay waited ahead, its door rusted and unpolished. Inside stretched a cavernous space, wide as a field, with one lonely light panel working above. The glow fell in a single circle, and within it stood Torval. He was not the bent, weary figure from the market. He stood tall, wings folded but strong, eyes sharp with determination. Around his neck hung a pendant swirling with the light of hidden galaxies. He looked at Lena, and his voice carried across the echoing chamber. "You came?" "Of course I came," Lena answered, stepping forward before fear could hold her back. And with those words, the night tilted into something greater, as if the station itself leaned closer to listen. The ore bay was silent, except for the hum of old machinery and the faint drip of condensation falling from steel beams. The Marlowe family stepped inside, their shoes echoing on the wide floor. Security officers spread out along the edges, while Captain Corvain, Navigator Celis, and Archivist Miraleth positioned themselves in a protective arc. The space was dim, except for one surviving light panel above the center. Its glow fell like a spotlight. And there, standing tall within it, was Torval. He no longer looked like the weary dragon from the market. His back was straight, his wings folded with strength, and his scales, though aged, caught the glow and reflected it like faded bronze polished by fire. His eyes, once clouded, now burned with calm focus. Around his neck hung a pendant, swirling with tiny lights that looked like a galaxy trapped inside crystal. Torval lowered his head slightly, his voice stronger than it had been before. "Your kindness brought me here," he said to Lena. "I hid from the universe for too long, but you reminded me that even the smallest act can carry across the stars." He lifted the pendant and placed it carefully into Lena's hands. It was warm, like a stone that had soaked in sunlight. "Guard this for 1 hour," he said. "Inside is the map to what our kind treasures most. After that, it will be mine again, or yours to carry forward if fate decides." Hema Marlowe asked the question that trembled in every parent's mind. Why only 1 hour? Torval's gaze stayed steady. "Because in 1 hour, the hunters will arrive. I sent them a message. I told them where to find me. They believe they will capture an old dragon. Instead, they will find a fleet." Celis gave a quick nod, his bronze scales catching the dim light. "We called, and our kin answered. Even now, they gather in hidden corners of space, ready to defend this station." The sirens of the habitat began to pulse. They were not wild alarms, but measured beats that carried urgency without panic. Families across Horizon Ring 12 were already moving into transports. The administrator's voice filled the comms with calm instructions. directing people toward evacuation zones. Security Sergeant Yarrow reported that the outer corridors were clear. Miralith, open channels layered with codes, speaking with arriving dragon ships. Corvain stood tall, his eyes locked on the dark bay doors, already preparing for the coming storm. Torval looked back at Lena. "May I show you something?" She nodded, clutching the pendant tight. He drew in a deep breath, then slowly spread his wings. They stretched wide, brushing the edges of the bay, enormous and full of age and power. Light flared along the scales, turning dull copper into glowing gold. It was as if his very body carried fire that had waited centuries to be released. His voice filled the chamber, steady and proud. "I am Torval, keeper of the Horizon Cache. I will no long." Lena clapped once before remembering the seriousness of the moment. She whispered, "You are beautiful." The old dragon lowered his head so his bright eyes met hers. "You are the reason I remember how to be." The minutes passed quickly. The Marlows, escorted by Corvain and the others, were guided to a command ship docked close by. From its wide viewport, they could see transports carrying families into safety. Around the dome, dark dragon ships began to arrive. First a few, then dozens, then hundreds. Some looked like simple cargo haulers, others like vast carriers, all moving with purpose. "Incoming," Celis said, watching the display fill with hostile signatures. 17 collector vessels. Their formation shows they are ready for battle. The enemy ships tore into normal space with a violent ripple. Sharp-edged vessels that looked more like predators than machines. Their voices crackled across open channels. "Surrender the Wayfarer, and the station will be spared." Captain Corvain stood firm, his voice like thunder contained in words. "This is Captain Corvain of the Sapphire Flight. Your crimes against our people are over. You will leave or be destroyed." The collectors answered with fire. Space lit up. Dragon ships moved as if alive. Flame burst from their bows. Not ordinary fire, but plasma, woven with energy fields, burning in the vacuum like ribbons of light. The collectors fired back, their weapons built to pierce dragon scales, but they could not cut through the heavy shields of military craft. And then Torval joined. He launched from the ore bay with his personal shield glowing bright around him. His wings pushed against nothing, yet carried him fast, faster than any human eye could track. He landed on the hull of the lead collector ship and dug in his claws. Armor peeled back under his strength as if it were fragile metal. Other dragons joined, tearing ships apart, piece by piece. Inside the command ship, Lena pressed her hands to the viewport. Her father Dev kept his arm around her, though he too could not look away. Hema whispered explanations about plasma reactions and shield mechanics, but even she sounded amazed. Rohan shouted excited descriptions, comparing the fight to the stories he had read about heroes and legends. "They're retreating," Rohan said, as enemy ships pulled back. "They are being allowed to retreat," Corvain corrected. "They must spread the word. The dragons are united again. The galaxy will know." Within 20 minutes, the battle ended. The station's shield grid folded back, unbroken. No civilian lives had been lost. The collectors, beaten and fearful, had fled. When Torval returned to the docking bay, He looked weary, but not broken. His scales still glowed faintly, his eyes calm with new purpose. Lena ran forward, bouncing with joy. "You were amazing! They fired and you were faster, and then they broke apart like paper." Torval laughed, a sound like wind through distant chimes. "It was not only me, it was all of us, together. But remember this, none of it would have happened without you." He reached into a pouch and handed her a small crystal, swirling with tiny galaxies. "Keep this. It carries the memory of tonight. When you're older, you'll see it again and know how one act of kindness shaped the stars." Lena held the crystal close, her eyes wide. "Will I see you again?" she asked. Torval's gaze softened. "Kindness is a compass, Lena Marlowe. It'll bring us together again when the time is right." The night at the ore bay ended not with silence, but with hope. Horizon Ring 12 had become more than a station. It had become the place where kindness called an old dragon out of hiding, and where a fleet remembered how to fight for the future. Life on Horizon Ring 12 slowly returned to normal after the night of the battle. Families moved back into their homes, shops reopened, and the artificial rain once again fell in steady rhythm across the market dome. Yet the people carried a new awareness. They knew the station was now protected by dragons who had returned to unity. And they whispered stories about how one small human child had reminded an elder of the power of kindness. Lena Marlowe did not feel like a hero. She went back to school. She drew pictures of planets in her notebooks, and she tried to keep Rohan from reprogramming every household robot to perform dance routines. But everywhere she walked, neighbors smiled at her differently, as if they were looking at more than a child. 3 weeks after the battle, something extraordinary happened in the science vaults of the station. One of the starlight eggs, hidden for centuries, began to glow brighter than the rest. Scientists watched in amazement as the shell cracked open long before its expected time. Out emerged a hatchling, unlike any dragon recorded in memory. Its scales shifted through every color of the spectrum, a living rainbow, and its eyes carried a calm wisdom far beyond its age. The hatchling was named Dawnsong, for when she stretched her wings, the entire room felt like morning. Dawnsong grew quickly and became a frequent visitor to the school. Children surrounded her, fascinated, unafraid. She followed Lena with quiet devotion, humming low notes whenever the girl spoke, as if echoing her thoughts. For Lena, the friendship was natural. She did not question why the young dragon listened so closely. She only knew that kindness had grown into something larger than herself. Years passed in the way time always does. Lena became a young woman, her childhood curiosity shaping into a life's purpose. She studied xenobiology, like her mother, but she specialized in the language of interspecies connection. She learned to speak with creatures no one thought could be understood. Rohan grew into an engineer whose machines reflected his humor and creativity. He designed service bots that not only worked well, but also carried small touches of personality. Their parents, Dev and Hema, aged with pride, often amazed at how their children had grown from a single night's choice into lives filled with meaning. On Lena's 21st birthday, the door to their apartment chimed. When she opened it, Captain Corvain stood there, looking almost unchanged since the night he had first entered their home. Beside him stood Dawnsong, now taller, her scales shimmering in radiant colors. Corvain smiled and said, "Torval asks for you. He wishes to show you what your kindness has built." The journey took 3 jumps beyond known star charts. When the command ship slowed, Lena saw a structure suspended near a triple star system. It glowed like crystal grown from light itself. Towers curved as if alive. Bridges arched with natural grace, and the entire station pulsed with gentle energy. It was called Auric Haven, the first cooperative city built together by humans and dragons. Torval greeted her at the docking bay. He looked younger than she remembered, his scales bright and steady, his eyes calm with peace. "Welcome," he said, his voice warm. "This place exists because of you. It began the night you offered a small act of kindness." They walked through the city. Lena saw dragons and humans working side by side in forges, creating alloys stronger than anything known before. She saw classrooms where hatchlings and children learned together, solving problems with both dragon wisdom and human imagination. In the nurseries, young dragons and human children played games that crossed boundaries neither species had dared to cross in the past. Torval spoke as they walked. "This is not only about dragons reclaiming their place. This is about a future where no species hides, where we face the galaxy together. Kindness is not a small thing. It is the root from which every future grows." In the central plaza, music floated through the air as people shared meals. Traders, scientists, builders, and caretakers filled the streets with easy laughter. A little girl tugged at Torval's tail and asked shyly for a story. The old dragon pointed toward Lena. "Ask her," he said. "She knows the one that matters." Lena knelt, smiling at the child. She began to tell the story, not as a tale of battles and fleets, but as a memory of a simple choice in a marketplace. She spoke of artificial rain, of a cake with glowing letters, of a moment when compassion outweighed hesitation. She told how that moment reached into the stars and brought unity back to a scattered people. Those who listened leaned closer. The plaza grew quiet as the story carried through the air. Dawnsong curled protectively behind Lena, her shifting scales reflecting every listener's face. When the story ended, Torval lifted his head and sang a note that other dragons answered. Their song rolled through the crystal towers, out across the stars, promising that the memory of kindness would not fade. Lena held the small memory crystal Torval had given her years before. She did not need to unlock it to know what it contained. The living city around her was proof enough. The seeds of tomorrow had been planted in a market dome by a child with a credit tab and the courage to see someone's need. Now those seeds had grown into a future where humans and dragons shared the same horizon. As the stars shimmered beyond Auric Haven, Lena understood what Torval had meant. Kindness is a compass, and it had guided them all here.